What's up, Flannelverse? I don't know what's going on. That took a minute to get the stream to finally load, but it looks like we are live now. So hopefully you guys are here with me. Why it says another shower? I mean, I was obviously running late. You can always expect me to be a couple minutes later than what I say, unless I have somebody else doing the show with me. It's just going to happen that way. But we're here now. We're going to go position by position: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends, defenses, kickers. I'll take questions, build lineups at the end for this Vikings and Colts Sunday Night Football slate here in Minnesota. Very exciting game. I mean, as far as showdown slates go, this is a really fun one. I'm pretty excited about this one. Should be pretty high scoring, I think. Vikings obviously great offense. Colts, I think, pretty good with Joe Flacco. Also, the defense is vulnerable, so this could be just a really fun, high scoring game. I'm looking forward to watching it. Hopefully, you guys are as well. Yes, Skull, absolutely right. Let's go Vikings. Home game. I think they should win this one. Anthony says Downs MVP. Oh yeah, Anthony. Sorry, I didn't respond to your question. Downs, I think, is a great on FanDuel, a great contrarian MVP. Works on DraftKings also, but yeah, I think he's getting very, very little ownership. He is one of my top MVP slash captain on DraftKings. He looks really good at very low ownership. Clearly has upside to pay off that. I'm on the wrong screen here, so let me move over to RotoGrinder so we can take a look at the ownership projections at RG. By the way, while you're coming in, a couple requests. If you're not already subscribed to the Flannelverse YouTube page, I would appreciate it. You can subscribe, like the video, comment if you want to support me. That is all very helpful. I'm trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. Looks like I'm still on pace, I think, but it's gonna be tough to get there. So would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. And if you want access to fantasy points, most of the stuff we're going to look at tonight is going to be the fantasy points data suite, some of their other stuff. You can find the link. Actually, no, there's no link in the description of this video. Just go to fantasypoints.com, use promo code Flannelverse. You can get 50% off any package you want. And then any other links you want for like RotoGrinders, you can get like $10 off. That's what we're looking at here. This is RotoGrinders lineup HQ on the screen right now. This is the RotoGrinders optimizer. If you want access to their projections and stuff, you can get $10 off using the link in the description. Okay. Let's go to captain. We're going to start obviously with quarterbacks as usual. So Joe Flacco, Sam Darnold, a couple of vets should be a fun one here. Sam Darnold coming in at 12% projected ownership in the captain spot. Joe Flacco coming in at 6% projected ownership in the captain spot. You can see there's a pretty big difference in their projections here. Darnold projecting for nearly 20 fantasy points, Flacco nearly 16. So four fantasy point different projection between the two of them. I still think Flacco clearly has pretty high upside here in this spot. The Vikings have been kind of a pass funnel recently. They've been really bad against the pass. So I think Flacco could pay off that salary. 12% to Darnold, I have no issue with it. I think that's a totally fine number for Darnold in the captain spot. But Flacco he was at what, 6%? Darnold 12%. That seems fine. Flacco at 6%. I do kind of like that, even with the major, lack of projection here. 16 is not the highest projection. I do still think the upside is there for Flacco. We saw it last year with the Browns. We've seen it this year a little bit with the Colts, that he actually makes the offense look a lot better. There's volatility there clearly, but I think 6% is a number I probably want to get a little bit on top of there for Flacco. And then in the flex, we have Sam Darnold, 48% projected ownership. Again, I don't think I have any real issue with that. 36% for for Flacco. Looks pretty good. I probably want to get on top of that. Of course, it's all relative, so we'll have to see if there are other places that I feel like I could get, below the field. Even, Jonathan Taylor's at 36%. That's the spot that I would normally want to fade, but he's actually not getting that much ownership. So I don't know. We'll see. But, just kind of eyeballing it without much context here, because again, it's Sunday. I don't spend as much time looking at the full context of the slate before these shows, but just looking at 36% looks pretty good for Flacco. As far as schedule adjusted stuff, I'll pull that up here for quarterbacks. Not a bad spot for Sam Darnold here. The Vikings the Colts defense has allowed the 7th most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. And then the Vikings defense down here is about 11th or 12th here. So not the worst, but I think it's even worse in the last 5, because the Vikings defense, 4th over the last 5 weeks. the Vikings defense has given up the fourth most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. So they started off the year really strong. The Vikings defense was looking legit. Lately, not so good, as you can see here. So not a bad spot for either of these quarterbacks. Let's see. Scott. Okay. Not going to read that off, but appreciate it, Scott. Yeah, I don't know that I have much else to say about. I guess we can talk about the correlation. So I think the ownership looks pretty good. Flacco looks a little bit under owned to me. Darnold looks appropriately owned. As far as correlations go, I'm always correlating both of these quarterbacks. Neither of them really has a ton of rushing upside. So if I have them in the flex, I'm including at least one pass catcher for both of them. If I have them in the captain spot, at least two. I do think you can include the running backs here. Actually, we'll take a look at that when we get to running backs. I forget exactly. I don't think Jonathan Taylor has been used a ton in the passing game so far this year, if I'm remembering correctly. But that also could be an Anthony Richardson issue. So maybe with Joe Flacco, he will. So I think you could include either of the starting running backs as stacking partners in this game. All right. I think that's going to do it for quarterbacks. Move on to running backs. One second here. Okay. Yeah, Scott, they just won't do that. Like, they don't want to direct people to my channel because that's directing people away from their own channel. So yeah, not something that I think they would be willing to do. All right, running backs. So I'll move this. Oh, and I got to pull up Showdown here. Aaron Jones, Jonathan Taylor, obviously, is where we start here. Aaron Jones with the highest projection of the running backs. Jones looks awesome tonight. Just he's only 9,600, has a great role for the Vikings. Colts have not been very good against the run. And again, we can pull up schedule adjusted. Colts, and this is just over the last five. I guess not as bad over the last five, but still a plus matchup for Aaron Jones. And his role has just gotten better over time. Middling matchup over the past 5 weeks for running backs against the Vikings. So I guess not as bad as it has been for the full year for running backs against the Vikings. On the full year, yeah, still like a slightly above average matchup here for the Vikings. On the full year, slightly below average, I guess, for the Colts. So not that huge of a difference, I suppose. But Aaron Jones is cheaper, has a great role, and we can pull up recent weeks how they have looked, because it seems he has, looked for a little while like we kind of thought this might be a split backfield for a while. Maybe Ty Chandler was going to have a significant role, and recently that has not been the case at all. As you can see here, Aaron Jones, 92% snap share last week. He had 19 carries, nothing for Ty Chandler or CJ Ham in the carries department. He also ran 69% of routes, only saw 2 targets, but running all the routes, that's promising. The week prior, three targets on 42% route participation, 14 carries. Ty Chandler had 2. Just Aaron Jones just gets all the work for the Vikings. So the role is awesome. The price is not very high, only 9,600 for Aaron Jones. Everything looks awesome for Jones. Projecting in the captain spot for 20% ownership. That's probably exactly what I get to. I probably set my cap for captains at 20%. So my guess is I'll get there with Aaron Jones. He's going to look awesome at captain. In the flex, we have Aaron Jones coming in at 43% ownership. Yeah, I don't know. So 63% total ownership on Aaron Jones. My guess is I'll be probably pretty close to that. I might come in a little bit light, but I have no real issue with it. I think that feels like a pretty fair number. He just looks awesome, given his role on the team. And you can see for the entire year, I want to say is 25 targets. Yeah, 25 targets on 46% route participation, 104 carries in 7 games, but promising that it's been kind of trending in the right direction with the 69% route participation last week. That is pretty nice for Aaron Jones. As far as other Vikings running backs, honestly, Ty Chandler, it's tough. So he's 2,600. We kind of thought earlier in the year he was going to have some standalone value. He has not really shown a ton of standalone value recently. He's just been not really on the field much, as we saw 92% snap share last week for Aaron Jones. So if he's not really going to be on the field a ton, it's really just contingent value for Ty Chandler. And Cam Akers is I believe, active tonight. Actually, I should double check. He wasn't on the inactives list. He hasn't played, so maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe he's on the practice squad and I missed that. But I think that he has competition, even if something were to happen to Aaron Jones. Let me double check that if he needed to be called up from the practice squad, because he hasn't played yet. Let's see. Do we have a projection for him at RG? Going to show unprojected also. Oh, no, I did that wrong. But there's been some coach speak suggesting that he doesn't have a projection. Maybe he does actually need to be called up, and I forgot to look into that with Cam Akers. So I'll have to look at that. The big one I will get to, Downs and Pittman. Downs, I would say is the wide receiver one there at this point. We'll talk about it, in the context of the showdown slate. Let me look up Cam Akers real quick, because I'm now I don't want to misspeak here, but I believe Cam Akers is active and some competition for. It's kind of a neither of them is going to have much of a role regardless, because Aaron Jones just takes everything. But it's at least good to know whether he is active and whether we have that little competition for the RB2 role. I'm not seeing anything on Cam Akers suggesting that he's not active. So I believe he is going to be active, at least for tonight. Anyway, regardless, neither of them particularly strong plays, because neither of them has really any standalone value. It's all contingent value, contingent on a blowout or an injury to Aaron Jones, at which point, who knows how much the Vikings will run. So it's, neither of them makes you feel particularly good, but obviously contingent value for a backup running back is high. And I think Ty Chandler would be my guess for who would be next up if something happened to Aaron Jones, or if there were a bloat. I think Ty Chandler would have that role. To start, he would be the RB who would come in and take over the Aaron Jones role to an extent. Maybe they just don't run as much, but I think he would benefit the most, followed by Cam Akers in that scenario. Appreciate you, Chris, our Apple guy here. Chris says, just popping in to say great show, like always, and show some support. This game seems so straightforward, but also so hard to nail because of pricing on DraftKings. Very true. Yeah, it's like it's nice in some ways, because we know who the teams want to target. It's also like TJ Hawkinson's first game back, TJ Hawkinson's first game with Sam Darnold. So like there are some things that we don't totally know. But yeah, it does seem pretty straightforward in terms of who we can expect to be on the field for the most part in this game. So that's kind of fun. Better prop, Downs 50 yards or Pittman 40. That's a close one. I think both of those seem pretty good. I think I would probably lean towards Downs 50 if I had to take one of those. I'd probably take the over on 50. All right. So Vikings running backs, it's all Aaron Jones. If you want continued value, I think Ty Chandler's fine for continued value. He's only 2,600, not projected for a crazy amount of ownership. Let's see. Yeah, 14% projected ownership for Ty Chandler. I probably come in a little bit lighter than that, which I don't usually do for RB2s, but just because I don't think he has really any, or at least not a ton of standalone value. I don't know. I think it's a fair number, 14%. Maybe I do get there because the contingent upside is awesome. And you could just have like a random, the usual thing. Aaron Jones rushes it down to the one. He's tired. They take him out. They bring in Ty Chandler. That would not be the most shocking thing in the world. Like game to game, there's probably going to be some variance in Ty Chandler's usage. So I think he's fine at around 14% ownership, but it's not like a spot where I'm looking at the backup RB and salivating at how low the ownership is. I think 14% seems about right, given he's pretty likely to be not worth anything, just like not put up any fantasy points, but also he could benefit greatly, obviously, if something happens to Aaron Jones or a blowout, whatever. All right. And then on the other side, you've got Jonathan Taylor leading the way. He is 10,600. So he is $1,000 more expensive than Aaron Jones. Projects 3 fantasy points worse than Aaron Jones. So obviously doesn't look that great from that perspective. If we look at here, let's take a look at his role in recent weeks. So last week he did have 20 carries, 0 for Tyler Goodson, 0 for Trey Sermon. So the role seems pretty legit. Jonathan Taylor, wait, is this last week? Let me make sure I'm sorted correctly. Yeah. He missed week 7. He's missed a bit. Let's see. How much time has he actually missed? Feels like he missed a handful of games. Yeah, he's only played 5 games. He has 92 carries in 5 games. So that's pretty strong. 10 targets also, so only being targeted 2 times per game, but that does include many games with Anthony Richardson. So you'd think probably with Joe Flacco he gets targeted a little bit more. Like running quarterbacks just don't target running backs all that often, because rather than dumping it off, they're just going to run it themselves. So that could be part of the issue there for Jonathan Taylor. We know he's a capable pass catching running back, so I'm not too worried about it, but so far has not shown that he has the same kind of passing game role that Aaron Jones does. And, Aaron Jones, again, 69% rep participation last week. Jonathan Taylor, 51% of the year is actually better than Jones on the year. But let's take a look. Last week, 54%, just 1 target there. I don't know. He's capable of being involved in the passing game more than he has been so far this year. Interesting. Tyler Goodson had 5 targets in a game. Interesting. Yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor looks fine, but it really comes down to ownership, and he's getting a bit of ownership in the captain spot, 11% ownership. I'm probably going to be a little bit light on that for Jonathan Taylor. Not the best matchup with the Vikings defense. I prefer some of the more involved in the passing game options. And then in the flex, I think 36% seems fine for Jonathan Taylor. So I'm probably going to be a little bit light in the captain spot. Maybe I'll have 30%. So maybe it'll be a slight fade for me on Jonathan Taylor. But he has a good enough role that, I don't feel that strongly about it. It is similar to Joe Mixon, where it's like, well, if he's not going to be involved in the passing game and he's this expensive, it is going to be tough for him to get there, even though he has a great role in the running game. Just not being buoyed by like 3 or 4 catches per game does bring down your floor and your ceiling a little bit. So it's tough, but also similar to Joe Mixon, it's like I'll probably be a little bit light, but I'm not going to try to like full fade Jonathan Taylor here. This seems like the ownership kind of accounts for his lack of involvement in the passing game, and obviously we could see that increase with Joe Flacco. So I don't want to like write off Jonathan Taylor, but you got to find spots that you're going to fade a little bit, and I think Jonathan Taylor for me is probably going to be one of those where I come in a little bit light. And then as far as other Colts backup running backs, it's like the exact same thing as the Vikings. Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson, both there for the Colts, both kind of expensive. Neither has much of a role unless we see something happen to Jonathan Taylor. So don't love them, but I think at low ownership, let's see, where's the ownership coming in? Trey Sermon, 5%. It's kind of interesting, I guess. I like the 5% ownership. And then where was Goodson? Where is Goodson? Is he inactive or something? What happened to Tyler Goodson? Why is he not here? I feel like I'm missing something here. Yeah, last week he ran 2 routes. Am I just blind? All right, I'm not seeing it. Let me go look elsewhere and see if I'm missing something with Goodson. Jesse says he should be there. Refresh it. Okay, thank you. Jesse taught me how to use RotoGrinders Lineup HQ, and I've been using it. It actually it has been good to me. All right, let's see. I'm still not seeing him. Jesse, can you tell me what you're getting for ownership for Goodson? I don't know why I'm not here. Do I need to reset projections. I don't want to spend that. I've spent enough time on Tyler Goodson already. But the same thing kind of applies here, where it's just not going to project that well. Doesn't have much of a standalone role. Somebody between Trey Sermon or Goodson. I think they're kind of similar plays where they just it's unclear who would come in and be the guy you want if something happened to Jonathan Taylor. Last week, 4 routes run for Trey Sermon, 2 for Goodson. Just 2 snaps for Goodson. So I guess Sermon probably the better play of the 2 of them. So yeah, I guess I would lean if you want to play a backup Colts running back. Trey Sermon would be my lean, but doesn't look that awesome. Doesn't have that much of a role. He's also 3,200, but 5% ownership does stand out as something I'd probably want to get on top of, at least if I were 150 maxing. I think it looks pretty good, but I think that's enough time on these backup running backs. Okay, only 1%. All right, that's sort of interesting. He could similar thing to Aaron Jones going down. Like maybe Jonathan Taylor just runs it down to the one of these backup running backs comes in, gets a random touchdown. I don't know if that would be enough because they're not min priced. They're both 2,600, 3,200. So yeah, I think they're both mediocre plays to me. Like they wouldn't make my first 5-10 lineups. They don't have much of a role. It would all be just if you think something, want to play it through. If something happens to Jonathan Taylor, then you could play a backup. Okay, let's see. Let's move on. From running backs and talk about wide receivers. Everything starts with Justin Jefferson, obviously. So we'll start with the obvious side first. Justin Jefferson at captain. 14% projected ownership, no issue with that. I mean, he's expensive, so that's going to keep the ownership in check a little bit. But yeah, I'll be on top of 14%. I probably get to 20% Justin Jefferson captain. I think he's just we know he's capable of putting up multiple touchdowns and 200 yards. So I'll take Justin Jefferson against the Colts defense all day at captain. At flex, we have Jets coming in at 42.5% projected ownership. Honestly, I might come in a little bit light on that, even as much as I love Justin Jefferson. Just the price tag is so high. I could see myself being a little bit light on that, as I do like the mid range here quite a bit too. So I think I probably attack that a little bit more and maybe end up a little bit light on Justin Jefferson. We'll see, to what extent I can fit him in with multiple of those mid range players, but I think it's going to be a little bit tough. So probably I end up overweight to the field on Justin Jefferson, the captain. A little bit light in the flex, end up with about the same amount total ownership on Jets as the field. But yeah, I think he's obviously a great play. He is the best receiver in the NFL, has an elite role, no real issue there. Great matchup here with the Colts. I guess we can take a look at that. Schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to receivers. Now, as you can see here, the Vikings are now the second worst defense at stopping receivers. They've allowed the second most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to receivers. Man, they have fallen from grace a little bit. The Colts here look like they're around 11th or 12th or so. So another positive matchup for Justin Jefferson. This could be a really fun game. But yeah, Justin Jefferson looks awesome. My takeaway is I'm going to be a little bit heavy at captain, a little bit light in the flex on Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison. So we have to keep in mind the context of TJ Hawkinson is coming back for this game. So that is going to impact probably all of the receivers outside of Justin Jefferson. Like Jefferson clearly is the top receiving threat for the Vikings, but you should expect it to affect all of the other receivers on the team. Should take a little bit of a usage bump dip going forward. And the coaches are saying no snap count for TJ Hawkinson. Like he is a full go tonight. He's 100% going tonight. It's his first game with Sam Darnold, so who knows to what extent he's actually going to be involved in the passing game. But every indication is that TJ Hawkinson is a full go tonight, which does hurt all of the other receivers a little bit because he's way better than any of the Vikings backup tight ends. But Jordan Addison, 6,200, so he's priced pretty fairly as the wide receiver too. Let's take a look at the ownership on Jordan Addison in the captain spot. Addison coming in at just 3% projected ownership. No issue with that. I mean, he's cheap. So like play Addison in captain. That allows you to play, several other studs in your lineup. So I think, yeah, 3%. I'll probably come on top of that number for Jordan Addison. In the flex, Addison coming in at 21% projected ownership. Yeah, I think I likely come over that as well. Again, I like this mid range. We've got a lot of nice options in the mid range. So I anticipate that I'll probably come a little bit over 21% ownership on Jordan Addison in the flex. Really like 3% in the captain spot as well. Everything looks good there, even with TJ Hawkinson there. I think Addison should continue to have a role. We saw him last year. He was, obviously better when either Jefferson or Hawkinson were out last year. That's when he really had his blow up games, but he's still involved regardless. So I think the price tag is fair and the ownership is not going to be too much for me. So I like Addison. And then Jalen Naylor is, Addison will be affected. Jalen Naylor, I would expect to be really affected by TJ Hawkinson's return. But he's only 4,000, 16% projected ownership. I think he's going to be pretty boom bust going forward. I think he'll probably have a couple spike weeks over the rest of the season. And by spike weeks for Jalen Naylor, I mean like 12 to 15 fantasy points. So I think coming in at 16% ownership looks pretty fair for Jalen Naylor. And we can take a look at Vikings' recent game logs. I think I'm in the right spot here. Yeah. No. Did I not sort this by week? Maybe not. Okay. Here, I'll sort by week. But I mean, the route participation has been strong for Jalen Naylor. I think that probably continues. So he's like a classic wide receiver 3, fast receiver who could have a splash play that pays off his salary at 4,000. Sort by week here. So as of last week, so again, this is without TJ Hawkinson, but they had, Josh Oliver, 45% route participation, Johnny Munt, 62%. So that's just, I think, obviously their route participation is going to come down significantly. I don't know how much it's going to affect the wide receivers, but as of last week, Jalen Naylor still 59% route participation, saw 4 targets. Maybe takes a little bit of a hit, but I still think like he's still the Vikings wide receiver 3, so he'll be on the field some, should have some opportunities. So when he's coming in at 16, 17% ownership, I think that's a reasonable number for Jalen Naylor. I'm probably not playing him at captain, but in the flex, I'll probably be close to this number for Jalen Naylor. I think it's a fair number for a wide receiver 3. And then I don't think there's any other Vikings receivers. Yeah, I'm not going to Powell, Sherfield, anywhere else for the Vikings. Okay, and then the other side of the game, we have Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. As you can see here, Josh Downs just $200 more than Michael Pittman, and he projects for 3 fantasy points better than Michael Pittman. But I think that's probably going to be somewhat reflected in ownership. It's interesting because, coming into the year, Michael Pittman, sort of more of a name brand. People have him on their fantasy teams, think that he's a wide receiver 1. But maybe it's finally flipped. Yeah, looks like it has. So Downs coming in at 10.5% projected ownership. Pittman coming in at 5% projected ownership. I kind of like that number for Pittman. Downs I think is fine. I have no issue with 10%, but Pittman, it does kind of stand out. Like I think he still has pretty nice upside. I think he has 21 targets in 3 games with Joe Flacco. So, Downs has 30 targets in those games. So Downs has been pretty clearly Flacco's go-to number 1 target, but still 21 targets in 3 games is pretty strong. So I like both. I think both look pretty strong at captain, but Pittman coming in significantly lower, around half the ownership of Downs. That does stand out to me. I still think he has the upside, even if he doesn't have the same kind of floor that Downs has. And then in the flex, we've got Pittman coming in at 29%, Downs coming in at 35%. And again, this is kind of this mid-range is where I think I'm going to be playing a lot today. Obviously, I'm going to pay up some for Jefferson, Jones, whatever, but I'm probably going to try to be above weight to the mid-range quite a bit. Yeah, I think they look great. My preference, if I'm building one lineup, like I think Downs is getting more ownership. I think Downs should be getting more ownership. Again, in the flex rate, Downs coming in 35%, Pittman 29%. Honestly, there should probably be a bigger gap than there is here in the flex. So like Downs getting double the ownership of Pittman in the captain spot, that makes me like Pittman more. But here, I think I'd rather play like over the field on Downs. Maybe I'll just match the field or even be a little bit light on Pittman. I think he's a decent play at 7,800. But Downs just looks awesome for somebody who has 30 targets in 3 games with Joe Flacco at 8,000. He stands out as the best play here, but Pittman, I think that's a reasonable number there. And then Alec Pierce. I do really like Alec Pierce. Not a great point per dollar play. But he's always just been a great boom bust option, which I like on a 1 game slate. He could just have one splash play really easily pay off his $5,600 price tag, and he's only coming in at 11.5% projected ownership. So Pierce stands out to me as probably my favorite, like, pretty contrarian option. I like him better than, Ty Chandler, clearly. I like him better than Naylor. I think he's probably just he's a better play in a vacuum than he's obviously 1,600 more expensive than Naylor, but I think Pierce has that profile of just like he's so boom bust. We know he's capable of those huge plays that he can pay off the salary. And he's coming in at lower ownership than Naylor. So Pierce is probably my favorite pretty contrarian option. There's nobody like sub 10% that I love here. But Pierce stands out to me as, 11. That's just too low given his upside. Now he also has major downside, so he's like clearly not a cashy type option. He's only for largest field contests, but I like him for large field tournaments. I think he looks great. Um, Josh, I actually haven't seen, I think, the best angle of the Saquon jumping over somebody backwards. I watched a short video of it, but I didn't have time to really dive in. I want to watch more angles of it because it sounds like it was very, very cool. Yes, Brandon, I think that it's viable to not play a quarterback on this slate. I like both the quarterbacks. I'll have quite a bit of both of them. But also, if you want to play a lineup without them, I really like that mid range. So just going to the receivers, getting all those PPR points instead of playing the quarterback, I think is definitely viable. And then outside of, so again, Pierce, I really like it at ownership. Probably not going to Ashton Doolin, anybody else on the Colts. And then we can move on to tight ends, and we'll talk about Mo Alley Cox. He's interesting. He is a conundrum. All right, moving on to tight ends. So again, before we get into Mo Alley Cox, let's talk about the Vikings, because T.J. Hawkinson, he's 6,600. All of the quotes from the coaches are he's a full go, he's 100%. There's no snap count, all of that. So I think he looks really good. I think I'm going to be probably over the field on T.J. Hawkinson, not getting a crazy high number amount of ownership here. Is coming in what, 20-ish%? Yeah, 20.5% projected ownership for TJ Hawkinson. He is 6,600. Honestly, Hawkinson and Addison to me are very similar plays. Like I think they both, you could make a case for either of them being the better play. They're both, mid sixes in price. They're both getting 20% ownership. But I think Hawkinson is a full go tonight. So I like both of them. 20.5% seems fair. And then at captain, I believe he's very contrarian. Let's see, Hawkinson 3%. So actually, yeah, again, very similar. Hawkinson and Addison, really hard to like find a reason to separate them. I guess we could take a look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. And it's a great spot. So maybe this is the differentiator. Third best possible matchup for tight ends in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed against the Colts. So great matchup for Hawkinson. Should be out there. Who knows what his chemistry looks like with Sam Darnold. I'm obviously hopeful, but we don't know if on this first game if he's going to have the role that we want him to have, if he's going to get usage that we are expecting for him. If that'll take time with Sam Darnold, it might. But I think that there's a chance that they just go right to him right away. They're excited to have him back. So I do like Hawkinson quite a bit. Maybe I break the tie. If I'm doing one lineup, I think I slightly break the tie from to TJ Hawkinson instead of Jordan Addison, but I like both. I think they both look a little bit under-owned for their salary, for their role on the team. Excited to get Hawkinson back in there. The Vikings backup tight ends, it's really tough. Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt. If you want to make a bet that the coaches are lying when they say that TJ Hawkinson has no snap count, no limitations, like they could say that, and then he runs 50% of the routes, and the coach would just say, "Yeah, well, that's just his role." You don't really know for sure, but I don't think that that's the case. I think probably Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt are relegated to true backup duties at tight end. In which case they look fine. Like they're low priced. It's kind of the classic backup tight end. If they score a touchdown for you, you probably want them. If they don't, you probably don't want them. With maybe a little bit more upside if you think that like TJ Hawkinson's just not actually going to come in and play all the snaps that he will a few weeks from now. Johnny Monk coming in at 6% projected ownership looks okay. Where's Josh Oliver? Where do I search? Oh, here it is. Oh, there it is. Okay. Not showing up. I don't know what's going on. Some of my players are missing, and I don't understand it. Not hiding the unprojected. Nobody's excluded. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on, why I'm not seeing all these players. They're players that I don't plan on playing anyway, so it doesn't actually affect me that much. But if you wanted to in a 150 set, get to some Josh Oliver, Johnny Munt, I think that they are viable. The Colts are a mess. So Mo Alley Cox projects the best of the group. He's going to get the most ownership, I believe, of the group. Let's take a look at it in the flex. So Mo Alley Cox coming in at 17% projected ownership. Kylan Granson, 9% projected ownership. Drew Ogletree, 8% projected ownership. I thought, wait, there's one more. Who else is there? Let's pull it up. Because they had 4 different tight ends see targets last week. Mo Alley Cox last week, 7 routes run, 1 target. Andrew Ogletree, 4 routes run, 0 targets. Kylan Granson, 9 routes run, 1 target. Will Mallory, 11 routes run, 2 targets. Like this is the case coming into the year. Like people were joking about it, and I thought at some point it would resolve itself and somebody would separate from the field and be the tight end one. That has not been the case. Clearly, nobody is running that many routes of the tight end group for the Colts. Again, Will Mallory up to 28% route participation, actually led the tight end room in route participation and targets last week. So that's kind of promising for Will Mallory. I think he's at least worth considering. Now, where was he? Search. Not getting a, I'm going to refresh this one more time because I feel like there's an error going on here. Reset the projections. Yeah, still not getting a projection. I think he's active. I don't think I've seen anything suggesting that he is inactive, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But I think he's in play. Let me double check. I want to say he's 200. Yeah, that's a good point. Eddie says you can't compare those from last week. You need to look at routes run and targets when Flacco is under center. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about Adonai Mitchell. That's my bad. All right, let me look. Let me look at Adonai Mitchell. Look at his ownership. So let's take a step back to wide receivers because Adonai Mitchell is a pretty interesting play. I'm gonna step back because he doesn't run a lot of routes, but he does earn a lot of targets for somebody who doesn't run a lot of routes, and he's only 3,000. Yeah, I don't know how I missed Adonai Mitchell when we're looking at wide receivers because I have interest for sure in Adonai Mitchell. Remove this. So Adonai Mitchell coming in at 20% projected ownership in the flex, 3% in the captain. I prefer him in the captain spot because I just don't think he has enough of a role to pay off at captain. He could obviously he could have 2 touchdowns or a touchdown and more usage than we expect, whatever. But prefer Mitchell in the flex where he's getting about 20% ownership. I think that's fair. Let's take a look at Adonai Mitchell's usage because it is interesting. So every week, basically recently. So he earlier in the year, great route participation. I think he got hurt in week 3. And then since then, it's been 20 to 30% route participation every game for Adonai Mitchell, but also 3 targets, 7 targets, 4 targets, 3 targets, 4 targets. So as far as wide receiver 4s go on a team, they do target him. Like when he is on the field, they target him quite a bit. So you got to think with this kind of, targets per route run, at some point you would expect him to have a bigger role. The team should at some point say, hey, look, he's earning targets every time he's on the field. Maybe we should get this guy a little bit more involved. He's only 3,000, 20% ownership. I think he's a really strong value play. So as far as like the true value plays, I mean, he's not like extremely contrarian at 20%. I think that's a reasonable ownership number. So I don't think that I'm like trying to get over that number. But let's see, in terms of value plays, 3,000 or lower. Not sure if there's anybody I like better. Like Oh, here's Goodson. Okay, Goodson is showing up now. So something has changed here. That's good. Certainly like him better than Ty Chandler, Cam Akers. Okay, good. Now everybody is showing up. So I guess the refresh did work out there. I think I actually like him better than, I don't know if I can say I like him better than Mo Alley Cox. Probably slightly. Alley Cox coming in at 17% projected ownership. It's pretty similar. So Mo Alley Cox, his deal is not really on the field all that much, and I think that's going to be the case regardless of whether Flacco is out there. But the nice thing about Mo Alley Cox is he gets a lot of first read targets. So if we look at, let's see, for the season, all Colts pass catchers, first read and end zone targets. So first, starting with first read targets, 10 for Mo Alley Cox on the year. So he's getting about one first read target, a little bit more than one per game. He is behind all of the receivers, all four: Downs, Pittman, A.D. Mitchell, and Alec Pierce. So he's below that group, but doubles Kylan Granson in terms of first read targets. Ogletree's at 4, Mallory's at 3. So when he does actually, like when he's on the field, he is seeing a good number of first read targets and also end zone targets, as you can see here. So Michael Pittman has the most on the year, followed by Downs, followed by A.D. Mitchell, 4 end zone targets. So just his usage has been awesome when he's on the field. Mo Alley Cox has 3 on the season, so doesn't run that many routes, but they do throw it to him in the end zone, and none of the other tight ends on the team have seen a single end zone target. So he's going to get ownership as a result because he projects better because he has that, the end zone targets, the first read targets. Everybody sees that, looks pretty good. Also, the thing is, you can say Mo Cox. That's true. You can call him Mo Cox, and that's kind of funny. So if you want to do that, you can. Yeah, I think he's a fine play. Like he's the classic backup tight end where it's, if he scores a touchdown, you'll want him. If he doesn't, you won't. But also, he's a little bit more likely to score a touchdown than most because, again, he has 3 end zone targets on the year. So I think 17% projected ownership for Mo Alley Cox is fine. Doesn't really stand out to me as a number I need to get overweight to. I think it's just it's a reasonable number. Kind of looks like a slightly above average matchup in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to tight ends. I don't know, Mallory, the role for Mallory last week was sort of interesting to me. And again, still doesn't have a projection here, but he's only 200 and he ran routes on 28% of dropbacks last week. That seems kind of promising for Will Mallory. Yeah, 28% route participation, saw a couple targets, has at least 1 target in each of the past 4 games. So I don't know. He's sort of interested me. Only 2 routes run in week 7. Don't know what to make of that. But every other week, getting a little bit, couple 3 of the 5 games with over 24% route participation for Will Mallory. It looks pretty good. I think the role is good enough that coming in at like 0 ownership, I think he's a fine super contrarian play, not like a RG just has nothing for him, I guess. Okay. Blitz has him for 1.9 for Will Mallory. Is that ownership? Okay. Let me, I guess I can just pull up Blitz here real quick. Do I have to reset? Okay. So at flex. Okay, so they have Mo Alley Cox coming in at 14% ownership. Trey Sermon 4.5. Will Mallory, okay, yeah, the projection of around 2. I know it's still only 3% ownership at 200. I think that he's probably the best min-priced play. So if you need a $200 play, I think Will Mallory is where I would probably go. I don't really see anybody else that I love at 200. So yeah, that would be, if you need a total pump play at the min price, Will Mallory would be my go-to just based on his usage last week. But he is very much the if he scores a touchdown, you want him type of backup tight end. Probably not going to have 5 catches. Just doesn't have that much of a role. Okay. Let's see. Ethan, appreciate the super chat. Very kind of you. Says Mo is a 2 touchdown or bust at best. I feel like the field is forgetting that the Vikings are the better offense, and that's coming from a Packers fan. also took down a Packer showdown based on outside the box breakdown. Love to hear that, Ethan. Congrats. That's really awesome. Probably wasn't today, right? Unless Sam Laporta started doing more than I thought he was going to, like than I hoped he would. He was doing very poorly last I looked, and I was pretty disappointed. Seems like the wind was a bigger factor there than I realized. But if it was today, then congrats. But appreciate the super chat. That is very kind of you. Yeah, the Vikings clearly do have the better offense. Up a grand. Oh, so it was today. Hell yeah, congrats, Ethan. Yeah, I think Mo at 1600 like doesn't necessarily need 2 touchdowns. He could just have a touchdown, 2 receptions, and 25 yards. Something like that would be plenty at 1600, probably. Maybe not. But like you to if you want to pay up for Jefferson, Aaron Jones, etc., like to get all the studs in, you probably need somebody who is cheap, and he might just be the cheapest guy that does something. So I don't think he necessarily needs to score 2 touchdowns to get there. I think he, at 1600, he could do a little bit less. All right. What else? I think that's it for tight ends. I mean, obviously, you could play, and I guess we can look at the ownership for the rest. So here on the Blitz, it's Mo Cox 14%, Will Mallory 3.5%, Kylan Granson 7%. So I objectively, like, I just straight up prefer Mallory over Kylan Granson. Drew Ogletree 3%. Again, I just go to Mallory there. I think he looks fine, but he's more expensive, doesn't have as good of a role. So Will Mallory would be my choice of the non-Mo Cox tight ends. And Mo Cox, I think, 14%. That looks totally fine to me. I'm going to go back to the RG projections. Okay. And then finally, defenses and kickers. I'm going to love the Vikings defense here. 15% projected ownership for the Vikings. They are 5,200. Joe Flacco is a turnover machine, just has always thrown a ton of interceptions. So that's really fun for a showdown slate to lean into that volatility. You can play lineups with both Joe Flacco and the Vikings defense because it's pretty likely that he's going to throw an interception or 2 in this game. He's just always been an interception machine, and he's fun because he'll also just sling it, throw some touchdowns, helps the receivers, but he also helps the opposing defense. That's a spot that I love on Showdown. So Vikings defense is going to be maybe one of my biggest stands on the slate. I think I'm going to have at least double the 15% that the field is projected to have. They are expensive, so that's the one downside. 5,200. I would love it if they were like a $3,600 defense. I would be all in on that, but even at 5,200. I'm willing to make that bet. I think they could cause some turnovers, maybe score a touchdown, and the field is not really playing a ton. So yeah, I like the Vikings defense quite a bit in this spot. Colts defense, so they are 3,600. So I have no issue with that either. I'll probably come in on top of that 18% project ownership. But it'll probably be I'll get to 20% of the Colts defense, whereas I want to get to like 30% of the Vikings defense, even though they're more expensive. But yeah, I think 3,600, that's just a nice price tag for the Colts defense. And then the kickers, Reichard coming in at 18% projected ownership, 5,000 seems fine. I prefer the Vikings defense, but I could very well, like, I don't have a strong track record, I think, with defenses versus kickers. It's usually a spot that I just throw my hands in the air, and I usually end up overweight on most. I prefer the Vikings defense, but I don't know that that's my strong suit, is guessing how defenses and kickers will perform. Then Matt Gay coming in at 18% ownership also seems totally fine. So I think, the ownership generally seems fine. The one spot that I think I'm taking kind of a big stand is the Vikings defense, just because of Joe Flacco's volatility as a passer. Just hoping for some havoc here in Minnesota. It is a home game for the Vikings defense. I always like that for defense also. So I do imagine I'll be overweight significantly to the Vikings defense. That's the one stand I'm taking on defenses and kickers. All right, let's move on to, let's take a brief look at FanDuel, and then I will build some lineups, take any questions, whatever. I'm seeing a question from Exumi Nest. Did Stochastic fire you for all the drinking? No, it was they had no issue with me drinking on the stream. It's not like I'm getting drunk on the stream. I usually have a beer that I sip as I'm going. No, I did not get fired for drinking. It was just layoffs. All right, FanDuel. Here we go. at MVP. Aaron Jones, 23% projected ownership. Seems fine. So again, there's no salary multiplier on FanDuel. So you need whoever is the highest scoring player in your lineup. You need to have them in the flex spot. I think 23% to Aaron Jones seems fine. Probably not like the first place I would go if I were just building one lineup. I'd probably go to somebody a little bit less owned. Sam Darnold, 21% seems a bit much to me. Also, Justin Jefferson looks awesome. I mean, 14% projected ownership. Again, where there is no salary multiplier, that looks really low to me for Justin Jefferson. So that might be, if I were building one lineup, I would consider Justin Jefferson in that spot. Taylor seems okay. I'd probably be lower. Now, Flacco, 10% here. Again, no real issue with it, but I'd probably be a little bit lower. Downs looks really good, 5.5% projected ownership. Pittman, 3%. So that those are probably, some of the places I would go. Justin Jefferson, probably number one for me. And then Downs, Pittman, both look really good. Hawkinson, 1.5% seems totally fine. Addison, 1%. He would need to be the highest scoring player in your lineup, though. So I think it's possible for Addison at 1%. I think he's probably more likely than 1% to be the highest scoring player there, but not by a ton. So I think that's fine. But Jefferson stands out to me as, like, if I were making one lineup, probably would be Jefferson or Downs would be my top choices there. In the flex, so let's see, who do we like that's contrarian? I mean, again, 28% to Jefferson in the flex looks really good to me. 35%, I like that for Aaron Jones. He's only 12,000, so the price tag is really low on Aaron Jones on FanDuel. That kind of stands out. I like it. Downs and Pittman, though, also look really good. Downs at 26% in particular. I'd be above that at 11,000 for Downs. Looks really good. Vikings defense still 9,000, 17% ownership stands out. I like that quite a bit. Hawkinson, Addison, not a lot of pretty strong, they're not super unowned, but like low enough ownership that, yeah, if you mix in like Hawkinson and Addison in a lineup, not a lot of people are going to have that combo. With both of them being 15%, you're really going to reduce the field size. So both look pretty good here. Adonai Mitchell, 13% looks decent, not a huge one. Alec Pierce, 9%. That stands out to me as a play I'd like to get to on FanDuel. And then it's just a bunch of, nobody that really excites me lower than that. You do have Mo Cox, so I know he's above Alec Pierce. I'd rather just play Pierce at 9,500. I guess Mo Cox is 6,500, so that kind of makes sense for the ownership to be higher there. But yeah, looks fine to me. Doesn't stand out as something I need. All right, now let's take a look at building some DraftKings lineups, and I'll take questions. And then I'll go build my own lineups. No, never. But no, nobody ever talked to me about my drinking. Like, it was, it's kind of the fun of doing like shows before lock. It's a little bit of happy hour. I don't actually have a drink right now. I just have water, but I'm going to take a sip. It's funny. All right. Do you have a preference, kicker or defense, in showdown slates in general? I wouldn't say so. I mean, kickers have been winning every slate this year, so maybe I should, but not really. I think really is slate dependent. There are some slates where it just stands out, like Steelers defense against a bad quarterback. It's like, yeah, I just want to play all the Steelers defense. So there are some that I prefer one over the other, but I don't think that I have a general rule there. All right, let's see. Appreciate you, Kieran. Yeah, I'm happy to be still working, even on my own here. It's been fun starting my own thing here. Gonna get rid of this streaming nonsense. Oh, the Millie lineup scored 256. Man, I have not checked in, obviously, since I started this show. Exhuming, no more drinking. I mean, I'll drink when I want to. I'm on my own channel. I can drink if I want one, but didn't need one. Yeah, I love playing NBA DFS. I didn't play today. I'm not going to play on Sundays when I have NFL, but I do play quite a bit of NBA DFS. Let's see. Maybe not. Not says, have kickers really won the last few weeks? I think kickers won the first month when teams couldn't score in the red zone. I feel like we've still had a couple in recent weeks. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I think there's still been some pretty good kickers. It still feels like every showdown slate within the first 5 minutes of the game, there's a field goal for 50 yards, but maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. All right. So Justin Jefferson just clearly my favorite, or one of my top captain options. So let's do a Justin Jefferson lineup to start. Where can we pay down? So we gotta, if you're playing Justin Jefferson at captain, you're gonna need some value options. 80 Mitchell, I like that. Just 3,000 looks pretty good. I do like the Vikings defense quite a bit, so maybe I go there. Alec Pierce is another play I like. Let's try Vikings defense. And now, I've said I like living in this kind of mid-range here, and I think that's probably where I'm most inclined to go. So maybe I go Hawkinson, Downs. Well, now I can't get up to Darnold, so that's kind of interesting. I could go to Aaron Jones. Do I go Pittman also? No, then I have 3 Colts pass catchers without Joe Flacco. It's not the worst thing, but what do I want to do here? See, I don't want to use my full salary because I could go from Downs to Pittman and then get Darnold in there. But I don't think that's the way I want to go. I could obviously throw Flacco in here. I do have him double stacked, but this would be this is a nice lineup, but it would be duped a ton, would be my guess. Maybe, it pulls the lever of Vikings defense against a Flacco double stack. So I guess it does some things to avoid, crazy duplication. But I think because it uses a full salary, I really hesitate to use a full salary. It also has Justin Jefferson in the captain spot without Joe Flacco. So maybe this is a decent enough lineup. It would just come down to, do you get the surprise of this lineup use a full salary cap and nobody played it? My guess is this will be duped like 50 times. But I think this is a decent large field lineup. Doesn't leave salary on the table, which I like to try to do. But I guess I could go away from Hawkinson, get down to Addison. That probably saves some dupes, at least a little bit. Actually, no, here's what I could do. I've got Flacco in there, so why not throw Pierce in there also? So now I have Flacco with Downs and Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. So a full-on Colts stack with the Vikings defense. So this would be contrarian for multiple reasons. Leaving $1,000 on the table. It's got a full Colt stack going up against the Vikings defense. People don't like doing that. Jefferson, the captain, with no Darnold. I think this looks like a strong large field lineup that, doesn't, you look at it and it's like, that doesn't really make sense, but also it could absolutely win. And not many people would play it. So this to me looks like a pretty strong large field tournament lineup. All right. What else? What else should I play around with? Any ideas? Let me take a look for questions. All right. Get rid of this stuff. Oh, that's awesome, Kieran. And you did know me before I started my new stream, though. I have no idea how the reach is for. I don't really know how YouTube works yet. I'm still pretty new to it. JJ MVP without Darnold. Yeah, I think that is totally viable to play Jets without Darnold at MVP. Let's see. All right. Let me try another one. I'm not seeing questions. I'm just seeing some conversation. Appreciate you being here with me. But I will try something different. So who else? Let's do I do like Downs at captain. Actually, Pittman was half the ownership of Downs, so maybe I should do that instead. Yeah, let's do that. Lower ownership on Pittman in the captain. Now maybe go down to, let's see. Could do a Moelle Cox lineup. Let's throw Hawkinson in here. We didn't end up with Hawkinson in the last one, at least the last iteration of the last one. Pittman in the captain. Now again, I don't want to play only the Vikings defense all the time, but I'm inclined to go there once again. Vikings defense. Now maybe, so I've got Pittman in there. What if I do Alec Pierce in here as well? Then we throw in Joe Flacco and now have 11,100 left. Can't get up to Jefferson. I could go Darnold in here with Hawkinson or Aaron Jones, which both look pretty good to me. So maybe let's go Aaron Jones here. So now 1,500 left on the table. We've got Flacco with Pierce and Pittman in the captain. against Vikings defense. So you're pulling that lever that people don't want to pull. Hawkinson, just a nice projection. Jones, nice projection. This looks like a pretty strong large field tournament lineup as well. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could swap out Jones for Jonathan Taylor, Sam Darnold, Josh Downs, a lot of different ways you could go here. But I think this looks like you could also swap out. So here's one, like this lineup, you need Hawkinson to outscore Josh Downs. So if you don't think that's possible, then you shouldn't play this lineup because you're leaving 1,500 on the table. That means it's possible to just take out Hawkinson and put Josh Downs in there. So if you play this lineup, you have to do it with the mindset of, I think Hawkinson could outscore Josh Downs. I think he could. I think it's plausible. Not the most likely thing. Again, we've seen Downs get targeted 30 times in 3 games with Joe Flacco. Just the usage has been awesome, but you never know. Maybe Hawkinson comes in and Sam Darnold just loves him and targets him 15 times. So I think it's plausible. Yeah, looks fine to me. Maybe not the highest likelihood lineup though. Could also go, like if you go Pierce up to Jordan Addison, suddenly you can't make that swap. So maybe that's arguably a little bit better. So you've got Jones, Addison, and Hawkinson. Now you don't have the ability to swap up from Hawkinson to Josh Downs, so you don't have that, weighing on you at all. I don't know. It's a intriguing, fun game that we're playing here. Let's see. Man, the bots are out tonight. I might need to get some more mods in here. Also, I think it might just not work in StreamYard where the things actually go away when people delete them. I don't know. All right. What else? I think we're good. Yeah, Australia only has one DFS website. Seems like people who I often get people sending in screenshots from Australia, other countries, and it's like, damn, that looks like people just crush over there. Seems like a lot of fun. So hopefully you are crushing, Kieran. I think that I've built all the lineups that I'm going to build here. I got to get to making my actual lineups, and I've got 15, I guess 20 minutes to do so, right? We have a little extra time tonight, but I think that we covered everything. I don't think I saw any other questions that we're waiting on. You guys can let me know if you have any last second, but I think I am going to sign out. If you haven't already done so, please do subscribe to the channel. Trying to get to 5,000 by the end of the football season. Flacco or Taylor in one lineup, Dan asks. It would really depend on the rest of your lineup. I like Flacco better in a vacuum than Jonathan Taylor, but if you don't, obviously if you don't have a Colts pass catcher, then I would probably just lean to Taylor in that scenario. I think Taylor's just he's a strong enough play also. So yeah, really depends on the rest of your lineup. What is he doing with his hands in the thumbnail? Are you talking about me? I'm doing this. I'm saying which one do I want of the players here? I don't know. It's me making a face. My wife told me to pose like that, and it just made sense for the thumbnails. I originally was doing this, but like that's what she told me to do. So that's what I'm doing. Single entry captain Justin Jefferson or Josh Downs. Those would be my top 2. Or I think Aaron Jones I love too, but he's also getting the most ownership there. So it'd probably be Justin Jefferson or Josh Downs if I were just to make one. Michael Pittman, just due to the low ownership on Pittman, would be probably my number 3. But yeah, if I were just making one single entry, it would probably just be Justin Jefferson in the captain there. All right. I think we're good. I think that we have answered all the questions. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Please do like the video, subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you want to get notifications when I go live, and I'll be live probably twice tomorrow. I'll have to talk to Adam. We'll see if he wins the FanDuel contest. Probably twice tomorrow. Hit the notification button if you want to get alerts when I go live on this channel. But appreciate all of you hanging out. Let's win some money tonight and Skol.